Okay. We are live. Yeah, it's showing the sign, so we're definitely live. Give me 1 second. I know this is not professional. I forgot to put my camera on. We're live here, but I trust the conversation will redeem us.
I hope so too.
I'm really sorry. 1 second.
Okay.
And all right. Okay, awesome. Hi, everybody. This is the Likeminds Liveseries, of course, brought to you by Likeminds Tribe. And I will be your host, Matthew Rose. And today we'll be having a special guest that goes by the name of Masego Khutsoane. I'll introduce her shortly, but the topic will be around the art of self-mastery, and we'll basically dig on her experience and a bit of and trying to link that to some of the knowledge that you guys may want or need. We'll be dealing with issues such as imposter syndrome. We'll be dealing with how to negotiate your value in a business setting, so to say. So without further ado, I will introduce Masego. Just give me a second. Let me share this. Okay, share screen. Give me 1 second. And here we go. So as you guys can see, her name is Masego Khutsoane. She is the CEO and founder of ProcureMentor. You can find them on Instagram and on all socials. You can, she's got a 20-year professional career. She provides advisory services to C-level supply chain and procurement officers and more. She's also a coach and mentor to high-performance teams. Some of her accolades or collaborations include being involved with brands like SAB, Standard Bank for a Women Entrepreneur Program. She's been involved with the Innovation Hub for Women in Innovation and Entrepreneurship, chairperson of the 4th Annual Africa Enterprise Development and Entrepreneurship Summit, hosted by Global Invest. She's also been a panel member of Women for Women Haiti, hosted in association with Miss SA. She has a lot of accolades, as you guys can see. She's a well-decorated entrepreneur and professional, and she's filled out all our pages. It's never happened before, so I'm happy about that. I had to minimize some of her accolades. They didn't all make it on to our pages. So yeah, that is Masego in a nutshell. And I'll just allow her to briefly introduce herself and just explain a little bit about what she does in the procurement space. And then we'll kind of tie that back in with our actual conversation, which will be on the art of self-mastery. Masego, take it away.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Wow, that's what happens when you're 20 years in the industry. You tend to achieve and get all these things under your name. But thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. And I need to put it out there as a disclaimer. I'm not a guru in self-mastery. So I'm going to talk about my experience. And in a nutshell, I think, like you said, I've been in the procurement industry for 20 years. Funny enough, having had an information systems and management degree, and I went into strategic management for my honors and did my MBA. Yeah. So it's been quite an interesting journey. And then about last year, actually my company is about 5 years old. Last year I decided, you know what, I actually need to not just do it as a sidebar. I want to do it full time. So I started working in terms of how to package my offering from a business coaching perspective, from I think procurement, making procurement cool, because normally procurement is seen as boring, it's seen as administrative, and it's not, because any sector you go to, there's procurement, there's an element of procurement. And I think it's how you think of a job. I always say it's not about the job, it's what you do when you're in the job. So that's procurement in a nutshell. And then I'm a partner with Destiny with Purpose, And Destiny with Purpose is a very interesting and exciting platform with my partner, and we're working on a whole lot of other exciting things that will be coming out shortly. I think from November onwards, you'll be seeing a lot of that coming together. And mostly Destiny with Purpose is just to say, women have power. And normally the society that women grow up in, and especially in South Africa, you look at the gender-based violence and the psychological impact that, that happens before that actual violence happens, is that, we are sort of conditioned to think that we are less than, or we can't do certain things, or we are not allowed in certain spaces. Yeah. So Destiny with Purpose is actually there to say, hang on, let's equip the women that know that there's more to life. They want more out of life. And most of them are actually, they've achieved certain milestones in their lives. So whether it's a degree, whatever it is, because remember, achievement and success means different things to different people. So then the question becomes, how do you then become your iconic self? My coach always says, be an icon. So, in a nutshell, Masego is inspired, I'm courageous, I'm original, and I'm necessary. I always tell myself that. And that's in a nutshell, that's an icon. And that's where I'm going.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that energy. So just to bring it around, I do want to touch on one important thing, because a part of my interest in your brand or your profile is that procurement as an industry has always been very far-fetched for me. It's something that I always see as far as like government and very like corporate-y stuff. But you have this way of spinning it to say that it also has an element of, the element exists in most businesses or in most industries. It's just maybe the wording rather that confuses people or makes them think that this is not. So, you know what I mean? So
it's not strategic.
Exactly. So just maybe touch a little bit on the lighter note that everybody in the creative industry or people who are starting small businesses may understand what procurement would mean on a lighter note.
Sure, I'll try, Matthew. I'll try. But the procurement. The funny thing about procurement is one of those professions where it's necessary. It's there. At the back of everything. So as an example, the mic that you're using, you had to go out and procure it. Yeah. But you procuring it, somebody had to buy it somewhere, and that's procurement. Procurement is, the laptop that we're using, the network that we're actually using. Somebody somewhere had to sit down with somebody from procurement and said, we actually want to put this type of equipment together. And we're thinking of selling it. Help us out in terms of where can we sell it? How can we sell it? Will it bring us money? So it's actually, procurement is part of your strategy within a business. You might not necessarily think of it as, procurement. You might think of it as sales. You might think of it as marketing. You might actually think of it as IT. But there's elements of procurement in everything that a lot of businesses actually do. Especially if you look at, I was going to say, as a doctor, you don't necessarily need to procure anything, but the reality is, the tools that the doctor uses, where did they buy them? How were they delivered there? So the whole supply chain, I think, process of delivering or actually acquiring the equipment and actually bringing it to that hospital, that's actually procurement. Now, in the entertainment industry, I was talking to a friend, Kamo, the one that introduced me to you. And she was saying to me, Messi doesn't understand. When you say procurement, what do you mean? So if you're going into a studio and you are shooting an episode, I don't know, one of these programs, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say any of the programs, but I'll say ECVI because I used to watch it a long eons ago. and the camera that's being used, the lady that comes and does the makeup, the food that's actually on the studio, the clothes that they're gonna wear. Somebody somewhere had to sit down and say, what is our budget? What can we actually get for our budget? And then decide with whoever else. So I think normally they work with your program directors to say, let's look at the budget. What can we actually get? What can we not get? So once the program director has decided, or the executive director, that this is what I want, somebody has to sit down somewhere and actually make it happen. And you might find that now, this is where normally there's confusion, where procurement from a strategic perspective helps with the actual thinking behind what you buy. Now, if you're doing, I think they call it purchasing. Purchasing is more, you get told, this is what you need to buy, and then you go out and you acquire that. So there's a huge difference. And I think in South Africa, we're still lagging behind, because if you look at like your European countries, you look at the USA, and I think Asia as well, they talk about strategic sourcing. And strategic sourcing now looks at the end-to-end process of how do you acquire, how do you actually make sure that there's process efficiencies in terms of how you acquire, you make sure that there's environmental impact in terms of looking at where you acquire, how you acquire, your contract management perspective comes into play as well. So we call it the pastel model. Sorry, tell me if I need to stop, because I can go on and on about procurement.
So at some point, a lot of creatives just zoned out, because it was like, whoa, detail.
I'm thinking that.
It's like, I understand, because part of, I mean, maybe a lot of other people do as well, because part of, building a business, you have to go through all of these things. Like pastel models is part of a business plan. So you get to understand some of these things. But for people who have just jumped in, straight into this entrepreneurship thing, sometimes may not know what that means, especially people in creative spaces, especially in production. What your role would actually mean for them, or what a similar role is executive producer. Because as an executive producer, like you said, at Buyer or whatever show, right? You'd have to, find the people who are gonna, basically you have to get a budget, find the budget, execute on what needs to be executed in production, bring everything together, bring everyone together, make sure that there's a director on set, make sure that the DOPs, everybody, the talent, everybody kind of comes together. You know what I mean? And that's the production process. And then there's also a pre-production process where it's like making sure that equipment is sourced, to make sure that the right people and everything. I mean, the role definitely expands a lot wider in the creative side, but where I'm seeing the correlation is maybe on that end as far as what you do. But I think procurement goes a lot further than that. Just based on what you're saying to me, these end-to-end things, I'm like, hey.
It does. I mean, I think from the creative side, two things. So for me, normally what I find and what I've seen is that normally creatives have a lot of experience, and then the business bug sort of hits them at some point, because now you have to think long term, and then they want to put business plans together. They want to come out and say, how do I package what I have? And I find that they struggle a lot there. So my business comes in to say, how can I then give you tools, and not just I try and stay away from some of the lingo, because you need to be careful, because there's these incubation hubs and they work to a certain point. So now where I come in is I add value, and I say, okay, fine, you've learned all this information. How do you then implement? Show me what you actually need, and then let's work on an action plan that in 2 months or 3 months you'll get the return for what you're doing. So that's the biggest one. And then the other one is, and I think you touched on it on one of your other programs, we call it stakeholder management or client relationship management.
Okay.
But this is where relationship comes in. How do you make sure that you have a community of power where you can leverage off and actually use the community that you've already built, or that you actually need to build, so that you get yourself to a certain level in terms of your business. But yeah, so in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, yeah. No, definitely. I like what you said, and I think this applies. Okay, two things. I think let me write this down. Let me just say one and then two, so I get it. So number one, I noticed you said something about you managing maybe the lingo that you use in business, because sometimes you can lose the client, or you can lose your audience based on the fact that you're going very technical to people who aren't as technical as you are.
Technical, yeah.
You went to school or whatever. You can't say the same for your audience, right?
Yeah,
they don't have the same experience and knowledge and education that you do in most cases, right? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but you can't take that chance. So I like what you said on that end. You should always mind the things that you say and how you explain things. I'm always told by my partner, break it down, make sure that a 5-year-old understands that, because not everyone is in the industry. And if you want to sell to someone who's in tech and you want to sell them a creative service, you need to make it, you need to break it down to a level that they understand. You know what I mean? You always need to be able to do that. So I think that's a good point. Two, you spoke about experience. Most creatives come in and they just have an abundance of experience, but they have no business acumen whatsoever. And then they get basically slapped down when they start their own businesses, because like you were so good at doing what you're doing, you thought in your head that it was that easy for everything that used to come together for you to come together the way it does when you start your own production. But there's so many moving parts to a team, right? Or to a business or a company. And a lot of creatives or a lot of entrepreneurs really that go out solo don't understand that. So that's when they start getting slapped with things like the pestle model and having to know these things. And it usually becomes this big thing. But
Matthew, if I can say something on that. So this is where now we talk about, where sometimes the imposter syndrome can also come in, if you don't mind me jumping in and saying this. Because remember, the imposter syndrome works on you're consciously competent. You know what you know, and everybody knows that, okay, Matthew is brilliant with 1, 2, 3. Now, there is a period where now you want to venture into something new, or you get into a new role, okay? I'll talk about myself, where I got into a new role. And I was consciously aware that I'm incompetent on certain things. And I think that's what we're touching on. And it's okay to know that, listen, consciously I'm incompetent on this, these 2 or 3 or 4 elements. And I need to grow into them. Now, the space where normally you find that imposter syndrome comes in is where you are unconsciously competent, okay? And because you know that you are consciously incompetent, the unconscious competent part gets swallowed up. I don't know if I'm making sense. So let me break it down.
Let's run that back. Well, I think I understand where you're going. I just need, if you can just break it down one more level.
Okay, so what am I saying? So you know that you are brilliant at what you do, and normally that's how you would decide that, you know what, I need to go to the next level. Yes. Now, when you decide to go to the next level, there's a part where you know that, okay, I need to learn, okay, and the learning could take the form of either reading books or sitting down and actually looking at YouTube channels or YouTube videos or listening to podcasts. So you know that you are consciously incompetent somewhere. Now, the problem with that, your self-confidence gets eroded. Your self-esteem sort of gets, I think as human beings, it's about the ego. It's about, especially if you were very good at something, and now you find yourself that actually I'm not that good, and I'm aware that I'm not good. But either you don't want to tell yourself that you're not that good, or you don't want people finding out. Now, there's elements where, because now you were that good, there is an unconscious competence that's happening as well, where people would actually think, but Masego, we know Masego, she can do this, she can excel at this. And that's where the area now becomes a bit gray for yourself, because you're thinking, oh my goodness, I am not as good as I used to be. And the imposter syndrome comes and says, yeah, who do you think you are? You can't do this. You're not as brilliant as you thought you were. And there's ways, to curb that. And I don't know if you want me to talk about that as well.
No, you can, because what I was gonna say is then suddenly 20 careers seems like 1 year, because you and I believe imposter syndrome can come to anybody. It can come to someone like you. It can come to me. You know what I mean? It can come to anybody, right? And what happens is, you do something for so long, and because I think our careers are ever evolving, you'll never know everything about your career.
True.
And that's
Exactly.
where I think the imposter syndrome kind of creeps in. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh,
Yeah.
damn, I don't know as much as I thought I do. Am
As
I
I
really
thought I
good
did.
because I don't know this? Or
Yeah.
did I shotgun, myself too quickly? Am I really a
Yeah.
comic? You know what I mean? Am I adequate enough to do this work? Why do these
Yeah.
clients trust me with such a big project? I don't even know how to do this particular thing. I don't
Yeah.
have the capacity. So many things. So I like that. I've never seen it that way, but I now understand why it's that way, because when it hits any of us, you know what I mean? It usually is in alignment, especially if you've been doing what you've been doing for, let's say,
For a
over,
long time.
I would say, over like 4 to 5 years, you begin
Yeah.
to think, okay, I've kind of mastered this. I've kind of understood everything there is to understand around my field or my practice or my industry. But then you reach year 6, 7, and then things start to go this way and that way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's where
Yeah.
it starts to eat into your self-confidence. So I
Yeah.
totally understand that. I'm a victim as well, openly sharing. They say the first step to recovery is admittance. And it's happened a lot. And
Yeah.
as creatives, especially in the creative space, because a lot of the time what we do is intangible. We get sold for less, or we feel like we should sell our skill for less. I
For
can
less.
tell you on the record, or for on the record, that once I found my footing in the creative industry, or as far as what I wanted to do, I was able to switch that around and actually be paid more for how I think as opposed to what
Yes.
I do.
Yes.
But in the beginning, we always want to hold on to the fact that I'm a great photographer, I'm a great
Yes.
designer, I'm a great this.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
another world where you're actually valued for how you think. And
Correct. Correct.
exactly, so getting to that space is also defeating imposter syndrome at some level, at least.
True. True.
Yeah.
I think, Matthew, I like what you said, because it's about, the technical mastery part of it. And that's why I said earlier on, the more you realize that you don't know, there's nothing wrong with saying to yourself, I don't know. The problem becomes when you become, I think, stubborn, if I can call it that, and you want to insist that, but this is my forte, this is my niche, and I'm going to stick with this, with what I know. Because, and I like what you said earlier on as well, to say it's an ever evolving industry. And I think, with COVID, you find that a lot of the industries are going to have to evolve. We are evolving either way. So the whole point is about, get to a point where your talent, you hone in on your talent, but now you learn a skill, or you find a way to actually bring more value to yourself and to others, because now you're learning. You are disciplined in learning to become valuable. And that's exactly for me, that's what I'm picking up. Because technical mastery says, I know what I know, and nobody can actually fault you on that. People would actually pay you a lot of money for what you know. But now, if you're also willing to be uncomfortable and say, but hang on, guys, how about we do it differently? And this is why I think it's going to bring us value. And this is what I'm picking up from what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's why you find that your CEOs, as an example, are paid more than the person who actually does most of the work down there. Why? Because one, they're willing to risk it and say, actually, I might not know, but I'll go and find out. And I'll come back and we'll try, this strategy. Let's do it this way.
Yes.
And that's the beauty. You see, yeah. The beauty is that they're willing to put themselves out there. And the more you're willing to put yourself out there, the more you are actually forced as an individual to say, let me learn, let me find out, let me expand my mind, let me expand my horizons, let me expand my network. It's not just about, this is not all that I know, what I'm seeing now. There's more out there. And the more you do that, you know what? There's no limit for you, honestly. There isn't. Yeah. And I'll think of an example. Look at, I'll use Michael Jordan. He's a basketball player. Okay, he's brilliant at what he does. But he was so good, and I think it's an example, but it's also sort of talks on other things. He was so good at what he does, and this happens a lot nowadays, where he now gets invited to come give TEDx talks because of how much he won in terms of the space of him being comfortable and moved out of that comfort zone to say, come, we want to hear what you have to say, you know? And you can imagine, I mean, if you're a basketball player, you don't talk much, you don't engage much with people. And being invited to come and say, we want to hear your thoughts, how you're doing something, it must have, you know, played with him at some point, at some level, for him to come out and say, okay, I'm comfortable, I can talk. And that community of power that I spoke about earlier, that also is very key, because these are people that will either fuel your fire or they'll douse it, because, you know, it's important who you surround yourself with. You don't want people coming in that will be like, no, dude, don't do that. You're good at what you're doing. Because imagine had you had people like that around you, you probably would not have found this niche that you're doing now. So.
Yeah, that's very true. We are by the support of what we become, right? They do say to raise a child, you need a village, something like that, right?
Yes.
And even in brands or business, in order to be very successful, I won't deny that there are some people and brands that are able to really just do it on their own because they were so good at what they did. But in most times, a business, a brand, a profession, it happens due to the community that you exist in.
Yeah.
That's how you become great at what it is. Because I think about it and I'm like, you know, I was only able to excel at certain things because of the community of people that I kept. If I failed at this, someone was there to correct my wrong. If I failed at that, someone was able to say, hey, no, dude, try this or try that. And that's what changed the game for me. But when I was just in my own cocoon, my growth rate at some point was like, I was doing the same thing for like a year or two. And then as soon as I got out there and I expanded, it was like, wow, okay, there's so much that can happen. And also to speak to, if I must play devil's advocate on the other side, if I'd surrounded myself with people that were like, dude, this isn't where you should be, this isn't what you're supposed to be doing, then we all kind of just fall into that bubble of like, wow, you know, maybe I'm dreaming too much. Maybe I'm thinking, you know what I mean? You know, maybe I shouldn't say like, maybe I should just be blowing my, you know, my money or blowing my life or not doing what, you know, because if you think about it, any person given a certain level of privilege, of course, an opportunity can become anything that they want to be. A rocket scientist, they can become a, you know, astronaut, they can become anything, right?
Anything.
And that's the thing. Literally, and that's why they say, it's a different example, but as a baby, you're a blank canvas, and what they paint onto you is what you become. And as human beings, at some level, our communities take over from our parents, and now they start painting what we become slowly, and the communities we are in kind of help the way that we grow. So I understand it from that level. I want to touch on another point, though. I don't want to take over from you. The 80-20 rule, the 20-80 rule, in terms of the technical aspect versus you breaking out of your comfort zone and doing what is not so technical in your field, whether it's like being a strategic person or being a CEO. In business, there's this thing that they say that 80% of it is actually psychological. It's actually mental, because you can be great at your mastery or your skill. You know, you can be a great person at whatever it is, but if you don't have the mental capacity to take the no's, to take the pressure, to take all the things that come with being in a, you know, a business environment or being in a professional environment, then you soon implode and you think it's not for you. And imposter syndrome just, you know, basically engulfs you. So I just wanted to touch on that. And yeah, I think we can go back to the previous point that we're making around what was it? Your community grows you. Community power, you call it, right? Power of, what do you call it?
So community of power.
Community of power.
Of power, yeah. So I'm going to talk to two things, because you mentioned two things, and the last one I thought, okay, that's self-mastery. But two things. So you are not responsible in terms of where you were born, or where you grow up. It's not your responsibility, honestly. But at some point, you need to then say, I want to take responsibility for my life. I want to make different decisions for my life. And this is from someone, I grew up in Soweto, okay? So back in the day, I grew up in the...
Yeah. Sorry to cut you, but...
Yeah.
My belief, about 7 to 8 out of 10 entrepreneurs that do really well in any industry have come from a community-driven location.
Background, yeah.
From a background, whether it was Soweto, Alex, Tembisa, wherever you come from. And if
you know why is that?
Yeah.
We learn to survive. We learn to survive. We learn to navigate through challenges. You learn to be street smart, to a large extent, because your street smart will complement your book knowledge. And sometimes you find that most of us, people that come from townships might not necessarily have the book knowledge, but you come from the University of Life. We normally call it the University of Life. and it's because you are forced to a large extent to not grow up in a cocoon. You grow up, like you said, in a community of people. So you get exposed to a lot of personalities from a young age, and you learn to manage people from a young age. You're just not aware of it. You only realize it when you're older, when you do, your own inner self-reflection or inner work, and you realize, but hang on, I've dealt with these people before. I know how to deal with it, And it's so funny, because when I started working, I used to come into the office, I was like, man, if I can survive Soweto, I can survive anywhere. And it's so interesting, because you then realize that, but hang on, I learned to negotiate, because when boys come up to you and say, hey, I like you, sister, or whatever, the first thing that you think is, am I safe? Is it okay? You think of a couple of things. Yeah. And when you're in the office environment, now you start realizing, but hang on, the fact that I was able to negotiate with that guy and actually convince him that I'm not your type, but in a very nice way, I can negotiate with anybody, and that's the beauty about life. And I think that's what I like what you said. For me, anyway, I've learned that every experience that I've gone through has come in handy for me.
I'll come back to you. Finish.
so two things. You said something. Oh yeah. So I said the community of practice, community of power. It's not necessarily about where you grew up, but it's about, for me, it's about what do you do with what you've learned. So that's the first one. The second one. I think I lost my train of thought, but you said something very powerful. You were talking about, I think, growth. Oh, yeah. So for me, what I picked up from the last point was it's important to do the inner work, and inner work meaning self-reflection. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people tend to run away. I was listening to another podcast when I was getting ready for this, and the guy was talking about 99% of people don't actually want to work. It's like, it's work in terms of they don't want to do what's necessary to get to the next level. Yes. They just want to be comfortable, and they just want to be left there. It's like that saying that says everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Because if you're disciplined, if you're diligent, if you actually want to put in the work, to some extent, the Bible says you die daily, and that's the dying to self, because you know that this version of you needs to die. You want to come up with a different version, a version that's more, influential, more impactful, more, I don't know, people that, you attract the value people that can come to you and say, oh, I like what you said. How do I partner with you? Because the funny thing, in closing, the funny thing about life, and I don't know if you've realized this, people that are on the higher echelons of life, that have actually, seen as you've achieved, are given a lot of free gifts. Ask yourself why. And people that are poor or that are not doing well, no, listen to this. People that are like right there, If they're given freely, it's frowned upon. Why is that? It's because of the value, value that you bring. So if I give, like a bonang, a free bag, and let's say I'm busy with bags, and she gets a bag, and she posts it on Instagram, there's value for me. I'm gonna get value out of that because it's gonna, bring whatever it brings, traffic or sales or whatever it is. But then if you're down there, and I'm not talking down to, poor people or anything like that, I'm just saying it's just as an example that, why it's so important to keep on learning, to keep on, expanding your horizons. It's actually very crucial.
No,
I can talk, Matthew. I'm sure you can pick that up.
No, I do. I do, and in the way that you're saying it, because it's like, and the thing is, it ties in with the next portion of the discussion. I just wanted to say, okay, before we go there, just want to say a quick shout out to everybody that's watching, everybody that's watching from each one of our platforms. Please like, subscribe, share, tag a friend, share it with whoever. Subscribe if you're on YouTube or whatever the case is. And also, if you have any questions for Masego, please drop that in the comments, in the comment section below. If you have, emojis you want to send your emojis, send everything. If you like the conversation that we're having, also the conversation will be up online for everybody to watch later on. So if that's something that you want to do, it will be up. And yeah. Going on to the next point. Okay, first, because I think it's a very valuable point that you left. The whole, when you're in the streets of Soweto or wherever the case is, when you're growing up and you're getting hit on by different guys, and you are able to discern for yourself that, is this guy worth my time or not? And for the mere fact that things are working out the way they are in this manner, maybe not so much because I've had the experience of having to deal with people like this before. So no, brothers. And that's usually the case. And in the professional world, you have to deal with sometimes clients that are like that, where it's like, maybe this client is not what I want. Maybe I should be aiming higher. Maybe this is not where I'm comfortable. So note to that as well. And I feel like that same, teaching or practice can work in your professional life, of being able to discern what opportunities are right for you or not, which also is tying in with the next section of the conversation, which is value, right? One of the important parts I want us to discuss is, how do we get to a point where we start negotiating our value? We've spoken about the technical part and how we can maybe break out of, being a, basically like a vendor machine where you just pop out, the product, but now you can actually go to the back end and be the person that decides what product's going to the vendor machine. So now we're speaking about the value and why should you, negotiate your value and stuff like that. So that's pretty much where I want to go with this.
I think it's important firstly to note that your value, nobody will ever really give you your value or your money's worth. I think let's be clear on that. I think the older you get, the more you realize people will, I think the world calls it screw you over. And it's important to, first of all, and it's important to say that, because I think for someone like, I think me, when I joined, corporate, I had this notion that, my working career is going to be easy. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. In 5 years or 10 years time, I'll be an MD or CEO. And I think that's what normally happens when you go to varsity and you come out. You were like super ambitious. And then my first job, I remember my boss sitting me down and saying to me, Masego, first of all, you need to have a very thick skin. Secondly, nobody will ever give you what you deserve. You need to fight for it. You need to negotiate for it. Okay. And then I think the last thing, if I remember, is that, so the thick skin, you need to negotiate. And then you also need to sell yourself. So what do I mean by sell yourself? And the three, I think they are linked. be clear in terms of what you need to do. So if they say, we want you to, and I'm going to make like silly examples, we want you to sell 5 rubbers by the end of the week. Be clear, okay, you want 5, it's 5 rubbers by the end of the week. So it's got a timeline, and it's got, what is it that you're supposed to be doing. You can ask, and this is where now most of the people, and I learned along the line, along the way as well, that you need to be clear, okay, who do I need to sell it to? Okay, what's your expectation? Because it's important to ask these questions. You find that once you don't ask and you assume things, at the end of the day, you shot yourself in the foot, because you're not able to come back and say, but hang on, I've done what you've asked. Because now the goalpost sort of changes. It's like, no, but that's not what I asked. I asked 1, 2, 3. And I'm sure a lot of us have gone through that. Yes. So how do you overcome that? A friend of mine calls it a book of remembrance. You have your book of remembrance. In procurement, we call it CYA, cover your ass. And what you do with that is that you literally list and jot down what you're doing and what you've done. So that at the end of it, and you keep track of emails, people or customers or whoever coming back and say, you've done well, we like what you've done. You keep those in your book of remembrance. So that when you go and you negotiate either a salary increase or a bonus or whatever it is that you're negotiating, you're able to show proof, and you're able to say, but this is what I've done, and you were happy. This is the feedback that you gave me. And that way, you don't leave room for anybody to come back and say, this is not good enough, or I actually never said that, or, it's clear, it's black and white, it's there. So that's the big one. The other one that I sort of touched on, it's important for you to believe in yourself. Faith goes a long way. Sometimes you need to know that you are good at your job. And to do that, I think we sort of touched on it earlier on, that whole technical mastery. And you need to be clear, this is what I know. And the areas that you are missing, that's where now you come in and you negotiate. And the negotiation part now, moving to the negotiation part, you are able to now say, you know what, either you're new or you've joined, I want to go and do my master's, or I want a 5%, 10%, well, actually more. The whole point of negotiation, you want to get it above 10%. This is why I actually believe that I've earned the 10% increase, and this is the value that I can bring in the next year. Should I get to be paid that 10%, or should I actually go in and you guys pay for my schooling, or whatever it is that you're actually negotiating at that time. So I'm using an office setup. Tell me if you want me to use the from a
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Creative setup as well.
Well, if you can go there,
it works.
If you're still comfortable going there on the creative side, I think
I'm not really comfortable because I've never really worked in the creative space.
Stick to what you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's best, because then
that works. Yes.
Work, or I can help make it work for whoever needs to hear it on the creative side. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think those are the practical steps where you can now, it's like I said, jot down what you've done, continuously get feedback from your manager, your clients, whoever it is, and have them in black and white. That way, when you go and negotiate, there is no, you're not leaving room for the other person to say, I don't necessarily agree with that, or, show me, how did you do that? You are able to bring your book of remembrance, and it's there clear, black and white. And now when you get into the negotiation, if you get a no, don't write it off. Ask, how do I then get to the point where I need to get to? Because a no might mean at the time that not now, it's not an opportunity for now. Or it could mean that it's next opportunity. Start looking for a next opportunity. You just have to work at it in a way that, is it beneficial to you at the end of the day? Honestly, for you, is it beneficial? Because you also don't want to be in a position where your value is not necessarily appreciated, because that's also important. You might be the best person or the best worker in whatever that you're doing, but if the people that you're working with don't see it, it's not necessarily your job. prove that you are, because that's what normally happens. You go into this mode and say, I'm gonna prove that I can do this. It's counterproductive. It's not where you want to be. You don't want to grind, you don't want to toil. You want to be in a space where you literally are comfortable and you are able to bring more value. Because with me, what I found, and I've been through what I talk about, what I find is when I went through that grinding and toiling, you lose the mark, you lose the plot, and you're no longer your best self at work. You sort of bring in elements like, I don't know, 60% of you, it's no longer 100% of you. But if you're in a place where you are appreciated, you are firm, now it's different because you actually go over and above what you're meant to be doing. And that's what I'm saying. Look for places as well where you are appreciated. And if you're not appreciated, then have a plan. Have a plan, a 1-year plan, whatever, to say, I'm going to start looking for a job, or I'm going to actually close the gaps that I'm seeing in myself and then, move to the next level. And this is where I was saying, that community of power helps, because you can have coaches, you can have mentors, you can have people that speak into your life and they see blind spots and they're able to say, hey, Masego, I see 1, 2, 3. How about you do that? Or I was listening to Robin Sharma's podcast and he was talking about self-mastery. Go and listen to it. That way something will click, because information becomes revelation when you can catch it. When you catch it, it's like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. Otherwise, and that's the problem. We live in an information age. There's so much information, but you need to know what you're looking for and why. Yeah.
And that's so true, because I want to speak to something so important based around what you just said. The last point before I cap some of the points that you had said. Entrepreneurship or being in a certain career, information is vast. There's too much information. I can direct you to so many sites if you're a startup where you can learn so many things, how to do this, how to do that, and it's all useless.
Yes.
The only person or the only people who get the benefit of the information that's even shared on this platform today right now are people who are on the move, people who are actually doing.
Yeah.
So the only way to catch information is to be doing already. And then it's like, oh yeah, I was doing something, I needed that answer. Okay, cool. Then you bring it to the table. But if you're just sitting at home and you're looking for motivation, it's not going to work out for you. This might even be a boring conversation. But if you're in the industry, you're grinding, you're actually doing something, and these are some of the challenges you're facing. It then makes you think, oh, let me maybe reframe the way that I do some of the things that I do, and maybe take that and make it work. Because at the end of the day, that's what entrepreneurship is. You're literally taking from here, taking from there, taking from here, and you're making it work somehow. And just to touch on that point, I really believe that if you're on the go, will any of the information in the world be of use to you?
Definitely. So, but it's also about focus. I think you said it, so I'm going to reiterate it. It's about focus. So whatever you focus on, you start seeing more of. It's like if you're looking for yellow cars, it's so weird. You get out of your house, you start seeing so many yellow cars, and you actually wonder, but why didn't I see this all along? But it's because now you're focused. You know your why. You know the driving force in terms of what you're doing and what is it that you want to get out of it. So it's important to know that. Yeah.
It is, because just a real life example. From a few years ago, there's a car that I really wanted at the time. I swear to you, I really wanted this car. And I would see it every day somewhere, whether I'm walking or whether I'm commuting somewhere, I would always see this car. And that's because, like you said, if you focus on something hard and long enough and you really, really want this thing, the universe will start showing you, more of it, more opportunities, more of this, more of that. You know what I mean? And it starts to align. And then I guess you just have to do your thing to kind of some of the things.
And I think if we touch on procrastination, because I think that's another point that you talked about, and you sort of touched on it now. You need to wonder what's the opportunity cost of not doing something.
Yeah.
And are you doing something that you're really passionate about, or that you heard Matthew say, oh, by the way, if you open I don't know, a spaza shop right now, you know, your whatever's gonna sell like hotcakes, but you're not passionate about that. So I think it's important that you ask yourself, why am I procrastinating? Why am I not doing? Why do I need external motivation to do certain things? Because for me, I think, you know, when you know your why, I'll come back to the why, you know, it's so, because you're internally now inspired. It's like an internal thing. You wake up in the morning, you know, okay, fine. Today, by Friday, I want to have done 1, 2, 3. You start driving it and you push for it. And it's so interesting. I think in South Africa, especially, we've got so many nice case studies. So I'll use DJ Stu as an example. You know, when he came out with Small Fire, he was like everywhere, like, guys, this is the drink of, you know, from South Africa. This is what I'm doing. And I think it was, to a certain extent, we thought that he was too pushy. You know, a lot of people, I mean, it was everywhere in the news and social media. People were like, you know, DJ Stu was like there with his drink. But you look at the fact that he didn't need validation. He didn't need affirmation. He was sold. He had that belief in himself and in that drink, and he kept at it. And look at him now. I mean, it's grown into soft drinks, I think, or something like that. But it's grown, and that's the beauty about believing in yourself, believing in your product. Because once you do, people will follow. It's about that, but it has to make sense. Obviously, whatever that you're doing, whatever that you're selling, has to make business sense. Otherwise, yeah, it does become a bit of a nightmare. We also know of case studies like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think you made a very valid point. You know, and I mean, there's very few people who can back themselves up like that, you know, who can really just go up in front of the world, and regardless of what everyone's saying about what it is that you're doing, continuously push through and push past what they call, what do they call it in Zulu?
What?
There's a way they call it.
Abantu
bazothini.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh.
Yeah. So if you can, I'm probably saying it in the worst way, but if you can push past what you think people are going to say about what you're doing, then there's that part where you're so affirmed in yourself that you start becoming successful, because you just start gravitating people who believe in you so much because of how you believe in yourself. And maybe for them, it's also that they'd like to believe in themselves in the way that you do, and that inspires them and kind of why they push, you know, towards your direction. So, I mean, that's a valid point on that. So just a quick cap of the second half of the conversation. We spoke about, as far as value, being able to choose what type of clients you want, being able to say, this is not the person, or these are not the guys that I want to work with because it doesn't align with my value system. You know what I mean? Okay, now and again, of course, you know, you've got to pay the bills. So you take a client that's paying you less, so it's more noisy than the others. But in most cases, you want to be able to say, if this is not what I want, then I'm not doing it, and stick by that. And that's pretty much how we start to see the value in ourselves. The other one was CYA, just cover your behind. And it's what that really means also is just showing evidence for the work that you have been doing. If you want to become maybe the CEO of your company, if you want to be promoted, if you want to, you know, do anything that, you know, that's out of your comfort zone, you need to be able to show evidence why you should be going into that direction. You know, even if it's business, I think it's a valid one. Why should you be in business? Show us in your personality. Are you someone that can take pressure? Are you someone that, you know, that's, you know, has the head to do this? Have you been in the industry, or do you need to find a partner? You know, that sort of thing. And also, I think it's very important as far as work goes, especially with promotions and stuff. It's like a lot of people just want to be promoted, want to be paid more, but they don't justify the cost.
Why?
It's like, okay, you want to be paid more for X. Why? No answer. No, but I've been doing this for 2 years. But in those 2 years,
Yes.
can you bring a report to
What
me
have
and
you
say,
done?
from when you started to where we are now, the business has doubled.
It's drop, yeah.
The performance of the teams have doubled,
Yes.
or whatever it is that you're doing has
Yes.
doubled, or there's been some kind of increase.
Increase.
And if that doesn't
Definitely.
get shown, then are you really valuable to that company? Are you
Yes.
really valuable to yourself? Are you really valuable for the project that you want to do? And if so, I think it's important to always
Yeah.
note those things down. And I think it also deals with our imposter syndrome, because they always say, remember where you started. So
Yeah.
you're able to go back and say, okay, 5 years ago,
Yes.
we were here and now we're doing this. And that
Yes.
kind of helps with where we're going.
No, definitely.
So
You summarized it so
yeah,
nicely. Yeah.
thank you. It really is your knowledge. I just facilitate. That's all I do. I'm just a mirror, me
Yeah.
bouncing
Yeah.
off ideas. But you know what, Masego, thank you for this conversation. It has been really amazing. And I think we've pretty much covered everything as far as this
Mm.
conversation. But I will ask, or rather give you an opportunity if you want to maybe leave a signing out point for our audience as far as this entire conversation. And I think we kind of we wrap it up
Okay.
right.
I think in closing, I feel like we didn't really also delve much into the self-mastery part of it. So in closing, I think I'm going to leave
Yeah.
everyone with, how do you make sure that you consistently build yourself up to a point of, being self-disciplined, I think self-leading. What does that look like? So there's a friend of mine who coined the acronym DREAM, and I use it, and it's worked wonders for me. And the DREAM is, the D is, you do daily devotions and affirmations. It's so interesting how when you daily tell yourself that I am worth it, what's the word? There was good things are supposed to happen to me. It's so interesting that you start looking, or you start seeing good things happening to you, and you, even when the bad things happen, then you're able to say, I'm not going to go with the bad things. I'm actually going to look at the situation and say, what do I need to learn from the situation? So daily affirmations and devotions. You read books that inspire and stretch you. So even if it means 30 minutes a day, read a page. It's so interesting because it expands your vocabulary. It makes you an interesting person, because when you talk to people, you just don't know the little that you know. You know so much more. Exercise. So DRE, exercise. This is our vehicle. That's the only vehicle you're going to have. So look after it. Drink water. Eat properly. And properly for me might be different for the next person. So understand how your body works. Action. Action means every day take action, even if it's a small thing. Even if you are working a 9 to 5 and you want to go become an entrepreneur, what are you doing that's actually building you up to leave the 9 to 5 to become an entrepreneur? And if you are an entrepreneur and you're wanting to scale your business, what are you doing, those small little steps, to actually get you to a point where your business then starts thriving? So do those things daily, because it's a daily activity, daily actions that will actually get you to become a master. And then the last one is maintain. So DREAM, maintain. So, the Bible says that you become what you behold. So we normally do vision boards at the beginning of the year. The more you look at that vision board, it's so interesting. Like we were saying about that car. You look at the vision board a year, 2 years later, you're like, oh my goodness, I've actually achieved 5 of the things that I wanted to achieve there on that board. Because why? You kept on seeing them, and your mind, it gets programmed to say, this is yours, and you work towards things that you programmed in your mind that they are yours. And I think lastly, see yourself there. There's a lot of that in everywhere you say. People will say, show up as your best self, or even if you don't feel like it, dress up. Wake up, and it's so true, because it's sometimes really you might not feel like being there or doing something. It's so important for you to work out in your own mind that I deserve to be in a place, and especially with imposter syndrome, tell yourself I deserve to be there. I deserve this. I want that. And you will start seeing that you slowly but surely, even the bad days are not so bad, because now the one element of what you want sort of is established in your own mind and in your own psyche. So that's just my closing, I think, advice. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. I think for me, the one out of the dream that I also think is so important is, connecting with yourself. List your achievements, list the things that, you've done. It doesn't have to be an award. It doesn't have to be anything extraordinary. It's just list things that you have done. And once you've accomplished them, always revisit those things, because those help you defeat the imposter syndrome, because then now you know how valuable you are, or how, experienced or how good you are at what you do. And always keep testimonials. I think that might help. And I think, for me, that's a great one to take home. And I do.
Awesome.
I'm, like I said, I feel like it's we've covered so much, and I feel like this is a 2-hour conversation as opposed to a 1-hour conversation, because
I know, right?
It can literally go on and on and on and on, because there's just so much in this specific I think topic that can be covered. And issues that can be covered, because usually we deal with technical stuff as far as, like, marketing, like I told you in the beginning, marketing or whatever. But sometimes it's like when you deal with the stuff of the mind, or the not so technical parts, it deals with that part in us that fails us in business, that fails us in our professional careers, that slows us down the most, actually. So these conversations are so important, and I really, really applaud you for coming on and talking about this and sharing your insights and your knowledge. It has been really, really appreciated. For the most part on my side. I hope the audience appreciates it as well. And like I said, the conversation will be up for everybody to basically catch up on what's going on. And I think me and you can catch up offline, of course. But as far as the conversation, I do want to say thank you, Masego, for coming on. And we sure hope to have you soon in the real world, when we start having real events again, because setup, it's getting a little bit old for me. I really want to start seeing and connecting with people, and even if we wear masks or whatever, I think I'm cool with that now. So hopefully we can do that sometime. But other than that, a special shout out to you, and thank you for coming on board. And
thank you for having me, Matthew. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thanks,
And if everyone who wants to catch her, her description will be on the description of the videos. It's there where you can catch her, and her company name, website, that sort of thing. So cheers.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.